Hi guys, welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for your time, for joining me today. Hope you have a beautiful morning or evening, depends on where you're at in the world. First, I really hope that all of you are safe and strong and wish this pandemic will be over and our life will be back to normal. I really appreciate the time it took to join me to this webinar. And I'm positive that you will find this webinar very useful and helpful, and you could use this information in order to protect yourself and the organization from remote work. So first, let me introduce myself. I'm Eyal Gurevich. I'm the head of sales and strategy here in Minerva. I've been working in the cybersecurity industry for the last 15 years. And one of the things that I really like to do is to share my experience and my knowledge in order to help companies achieve their security goals and to protect them. So I'm happy to do this webinar also. So let's dive into the presentation. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to write them on the Q&A icon above. And at the end of the presentation, I will be happy to answer all the questions. Thank you. So you probably know this image and this guy, the pandemic that hit us in the last year. If we look at the cybersecurity world and we try to see what this pandemic caused in terms of cybersecurity, so we have more and more remote workers and people are going to work from home. This caused the CISOs of the world and the cybersecurity personnel a big headache and thinking, how can we do it in a safe way? When the biggest problem is how we can monitor these unmanaged devices that are connected into our network and how can we protect the organization. So we see the network full of articles and news, and of course also the DoD in the United States has some posts about it and talking about how we can protect ourselves from this issue. Now the problem is how to protect the organization from unmanaged devices, right? All the home PCs that are connecting into the organization remotely. Some companies use VPN and some don't in order to connect into the organization, but still these are unmanaged devices that the organization needs to find the best way to protect itself from them and to find security measures and eyes on these unmanaged devices. So possible solutions out there that we hear about are, one of them is, for example, buying laptops and install corporate software on them. These projects usually are very expensive, buying all the hardware. Also, in terms of operational complexity, we see here a lot of staff involved in installing these laptops and sending them to the different employees. And of course, we need boots on the ground in order to help and sustain this operation if you have any technical issue or if you need a physical touch with these endpoints in order to solve them and fix them. In terms of endpoint control, so yeah, you have a pretty good control on these endpoints. Of course, one of the things you don't have is the control on the home network. And of course, you won't buy a firewall to each home to protect your perimeter. This will be very expensive, of course, but it's a rather good solution in terms of control. In terms of privacy compliance, so it's fully compliant because this is a laptop or corporate computer that you supply to your employees. The other solution that we hear about is the installing corporate software, taking the security solutions from the corporate and install them on the home PCs. This is a cheaper solution, but the operational complexity is still high in these situations because not all the cybersecurity solutions out there support all the OS flavors, and there are many type of different solutions that are more complex to install. And as you know, the home workers usually are not tech savvy and you want to make it easy for them to work from home to allow business continuity. In terms of endpoint control, so yeah, you have more or less the full ability to control them if you install this corporate software, but I think the biggest issue is the privacy compliance. So if you install the corporate software on the home PC, what will happen is that you monitor these endpoints 24/7. So if the user, for example, navigates off hours to funny websites, to gambling websites, or run all kinds of softwares that he don't want the employer to know about, so this is a big privacy issue because potentially the employer can see everything that's happening on this endpoint throughout the whole day, and not only throughout the session when the user is connected to the organization. Now, what the CISO wants. So basically, the simple thing is he wants an effective protection on unmanaged devices. He wants eyes on these unmanaged devices, and he wants to know what is the security risk exposure that he has. Also, he needs a fast and seamless deployment. It should be easy because he don't want to create any antagonism from his users, and he wants a transparent solution for the home users. Now, this is exactly where Minerva comes in with our remote user protection solution. Actually, this is not a new solution. This solution was built about 2 years ago by request of one of the big banks. The idea behind it was to allow connection from external vendors and external users with unmanaged devices to the organization in a secure way. And I will explain a bit exactly how it looks. So few words about Minerva. Minerva was founded in 2014. We have 3 granted patents. We have over 1,000 customers worldwide, and we protect more than 1 million endpoints at our customers. Our domain is, of course, endpoint security, and our product is an active zero-touch, prevention-first endpoint protection platform from known and unknown threats. Now, I want to focus for a second on the patent because this is the idea behind Minerva. Our patent basically the patent is about the approach, how we reach and how we look at the cybersecurity challenge today. And all the prizes that you see below, the awards that we won, is a recognition of the market for this approach and how we see the cybersecurity challenge. We don't work based on the same paradigm of detection and response. We are a preventative solution. And this approach allows us to prevent any execution of malware without knowing anything about the malware, and we prevent that at the beachhead stage before the malware even executed or infected any endpoint on the network. So in a nutshell about the platform, so the Minerva patent is what we call the VR layer, the virtual reality layer, or the simulation layer as we call it. We wrap the operating system with this layer, and basically we can simulate whatever we want into the operating system. And on top of it, we created many modules that gives you the ability to deal with many verticals and different cybersecurity threats. So I'll give you a short example how it looks. Let's say you have a sandbox in the organization, and you want, and the sandbox sees a malware is coming in. He analyzes this malware, and it identifies as malicious. So what he will do, it will prevent him from going into the organization. Now the attacker understands that. So what they did is they took this malware, encrypted it, and wrap it up with a legitimate piece of code asking, am I on a sandbox, right? So now when they reach the sandbox, they will ask, am I on a sandbox? They won't detonate. The sandbox cannot read the content of the file. And once they move on from the sandbox into the physical environment, the real environment, they will execute. So what if we could simulate as if all the endpoints in the world have sandbox? So we would prevent this type of attacks all over the world. So this is exactly what Minerva does. We have many modules here. We are very strong in the world of memory injections attacks, fileless attacks, living of the land attacks. We protect malicious document, all kinds of macro attacks and similar attacks like that. And of course, we have also a solution from ransomware, where ransomware, the business model of ransomware, is talking about being as evasive as possible in order to get the largest foothold on the network. So we probably will prevent these type of attacks, this 99% of the attacks at the initial stage, at the beachhead stage, so they won't happen and won't infect the network. And in case we fail, we have a second layer also patented by Minerva, where we can restore all the information that is encrypted using our proprietary technology. So we took all this great technology and we wrap it up in one transient agent. So we have all Minerva in one transient agent. And now with this agent, okay, this executable, we can enforce the endpoint compliance for any unmanaged device. So we don't need to install anything. We just have this portable agent that we can run anywhere and gives you the full Minerva solution in there. Now, this is an install free, of course, as I mentioned, and it works only throughout the session. Now, another key point that I want to indicate here, many solutions talk about, a separate between the user and the machine. So you can use like application screening or any other application or application publishing when the user is connected to the organization. But still, if on that unmanaged endpoint, you will have a RAD that is capturing the string every 30 seconds, you will not be able to protect yourself from that. If there is a keylogger on that endpoint that is stealing all the keystrokes, you will not be able to protect yourself from that. This is also what Minerva can achieve using this solution. Now, this solution is a no hassle for the users. There's no prerequisites. We support Windows XP and up, no reboots when you run this agent, no elevation needed, and it just works outside the box. Now, if we look at the different solutions that we talk about, so we added the Minerva solution where the cost is much more affordable than any other solution that we just talked about. The operational complexity is near to zero because the user doesn't really have to do much except pressing this executable. And also at the organization side, it's a fairly easy integration. The endpoint control is a full control because you sit at the endpoint side throughout the whole session. And the privacy compliance, of course, you have it also full and fully compliant because you run only throughout the session. Minerva is running throughout the session. Once the session is ended, the VPN session or the connection to the organization is ended, Minerva deactivates and turned off. So once the user is not at work, this is not working and protecting. So let's try to visualize what I've just told you. So we have two organizations and two users that wants to connect to the organization. So they connect through the VPN. Organization 2 connects through the VPN, but organization number 2, her home unmanaged device, has Minerva on it. So if, for example, we have an attacker that attacks the home unmanaged devices, which is something a lot of attackers like to do today because they understand that these endpoints are the weak spot at the organization, so they will attack those. And we hear a lot about that. So on organization 1, we can see the attacker can sit in that endpoint and find ways to steal information. It could be via capturing of the screen, keylogging, or trying to go over the tunnel itself and reach to the organization. With the Minerva solution, we leave the hacker out. So let me show you a short video that explains how this solution looks like. Okay, so as you can see in this video, the user wants to log into the VPN connection in the organization, launch the VPN connection. In this case, we use Pool Secure as the VPN to connect. What we see here is that the host checker checks if the Minerva agent is running on the endpoint, very similar to the policy that checks the antivirus, if it's up to date, and so on. So the user, we see that the user doesn't have Minerva. We give him the ability to download Minerva, and here he can run Minerva without installing anything, no elevation needed, and no restart. Now, Minerva is running on the background, connected to the server, and start protecting this endpoint. Now, the host checker sees that Minerva is running, so it allows the user to connect to the organization. The user now can run the RDP session into the organization. This is probably something similar to what you see in your organization. And everything very easy for the user, not much has changed. In the background, here is an example of an unmanaged device where sometimes in these endpoints we have all kinds of keygens and fishy software and all kinds of files that do malicious activity on the endpoint. So here we have an example for a keygen for the game Grand Theft Auto, where this file is trying to inject something into the memory, and we prevented it using the Minerva transient agent at the unmanaged device. Now the user received this notification that can be customizable by the organization. Now let me show you a little bit more in-depth information about this. So here we have an endpoint that doesn't have Minerva running on it, right? So let's try to run this keylogger in here. And in this example, we can see a file being generated inside the user folder. And this is just for the example. You can see that every keystroke that I type is being recorded here. So basically, this can be sent directly to the attacker. So this keylogger is running on an unprotected machine. And also, if we have a top secret document in here, and we'll try to screen capture this document, we will be able to do that. Now let's go to a machine that has Minerva on it, and let's see what's happened. So if we try to run the same keylogger here, we will see it's being prevented by Minerva. Minerva identified this as a keylogger, this is a malicious activity, we're not allowing this malicious activity, and we prevented it from starting. Now, in terms of files and screen capturing, if we try to screen capture, this is what the malicious code or malware will see, a black screen. This is how we protected the valuable information of the organization from being leaked out of the organization. So this is the idea. If you have any questions, yes. Okay, I see that you have some questions here at the console. So what type of VPN you support? So as I mentioned, we support all type of VPN. We are agnostic to the VPN version or type. And actually, we have some customers that are not using VPN in order to connect to organization. And we have also solutions for that. If you want to hear more about it, I'll be happy to share. Another question, where can you manage the connected endpoints? So yeah, this is more an architecture question, a great question. So once we install this environment, what we have a management console at the DMZ or in the cloud of the organization. And over there, all the events are collected to that management console, and the security team can reach there and see all the events and take care of them and decide if they want to act on the different events. By the way, something important about that is that once you have an event on Minerva, this doesn't mean you're being breached. This means it's been prevented, so you can be calm and know that this has been prevented and continue. And like we like to say, you can finish your coffee if you see an event in Minerva. What OS version you support? So we support, as I mentioned, XP and up, legacy system. So you can feel free to deploy it, and I believe this will be no issue in your deployment. Are there any configurations to be made on the user side in order to the Transient Agent to work? So no, there's no configuration to be made. The agent is pre-configured with everything it needs. And as I mentioned, working out of the box, So you can feel very calm that once it reaches the endpoint and launched, it starts protecting. Of course, if you have some policy adjustments that you want to add, for example, you don't want to allow anyone after the VPN connection to run the WhatsApp app, so you can prevent from it to happen. Okay, we have here the last question. How Minerva deactivates at the end of the VPN session? So this is also a policy configuration. We use we configure Minerva to understand when the session is ended, and it deactivates and the computer returns to be a regular unmanaged device. For next steps, if you want to have a POC, so it's for free, feel free to reach out and I will let you know all the details about it. We have also great reseller opportunities, so feel free to reach out. And I really thank you for your time and wish you all health and safety. Thank you, guys.